Good evening, everyone. My name is Ken. I'm the chef at Belgard Kitchen, and I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for our first Apron Club session. Tonight we have a special Valentine's Day edition here in my pink kitchen. We're going to do a 3-course dinner together. First course, we're going to do a seared scallop. Main course, we're going to do a wild mushroom and truffle risotto, and lastly, we're going to top it all off with a chocolate fondant cake. As it's a pre-recorded video going along with your meal kits that you would have picked up at the restaurant, feel free to pause, skip ahead, rewind, watch some things twice, work at your own pace as needed. And without further ado, let's get started. So everybody would have come by the restaurant to pick up their meal kits, so let's have a look at what's inside. So for our first course, we have our scallops, our vegetables, which is going to have fennel, cucumber, 2 kinds of radish, lemon, and some herbs. We'll also have salt for brining the scallops, and some olive oil. Next up, we have our risotto ingredients. I have a bag with a shallot and some wild mushrooms. Our risotto rice, this is arborio rice. We'll have 2 containers of mushroom stock. Some white wine. Truffle butter. And some grated Parmesan cheese. And for our dessert course, we have 2 eggs, butter, Amarena cherries, dark chocolate chips, cocoa powder, whipped cream, flour, sugar, and 2 foil baking cups. So we've left a few basic pantry ingredients out of the meal kits, as we assume most people have them around the house. For tonight, we're going to also need some cooking oil. Right here I have canola. You could also use grapeseed or sunflower, anything with a high smoke point and neutral flavor. I would recommend against using an extra virgin olive oil or something like that. Also got some salt for seasoning, and if you prefer pepper, it'd probably be really good on the risotto. Completely up to you, not mandatory, but good to have. Next, let's have a look at what equipment we need for tonight. Get some spoons. Also a wooden spoon for a risotto. A rubber spatula for dessert. A ladle. Good set of tongs. And a couple of whisks. For pots and pans, we're going to need this evening. A good saute pan. I'm going to use a non-stick for my scallops. You could also use a cast iron or a carbon pan. Small pot for heating up our mushroom stock to make the risotto. A saute pan for cooking the risotto. It's best to have something that's a bit wider. You could use something along the same lines as this as well. And another pot for creating a double boiler to melt our chocolate. Next up, we'll go through our bowls and containers we're going to need. A large container for brining our scallops. A steel bowl for melting our chocolate. A bowl for tossing our salad. Small container to hold our shallots. Another bowl for mixing dessert components. Something to store our mushrooms in after they're sauteed. And a couple small plates for our scallops as we prep them. Other things we'll need are a cutting board, a chef knife. It's a good idea to have a clean towel, and we're also going to need a roll of paper towel. And finally, we go through the plates we need for presenting tonight's dinner. For the first course, nice big plate. For a risotto, a large bowl or plate would do as well, as long as it has some sloping sides to it. And for dessert, anything goes. A smaller plate, I'm going to use these. So the first thing we're going to do is get our oven preheated for our dessert. I've got one of these handy little tabletop convection ovens, and of course any standard oven will work as well. So the temperature we're looking for our cakes is going to be 400 degrees. So we'll just start that up now. Make sure we're set to 400 degrees. And that'll be ready for us by the time it's time to put our cake in. Okay, so the first cooking step we're going to do is we're actually going to heat up our stock for the risotto. So in everybody's box there should be 2 containers that will say mushroom stock. We're going to get those out. Grab our pot. And just pour both containers of stock in there. Should be enough for the risotto. As it heats up, some of it will evaporate. You can, if you find that you are running low when we actually get to the risotto making step, you can always top up with a bit of water because it's just the water evaporating out as it simmers away. Just want to put that on extremely low heat now, let that heat up as we do the next steps. So I'm just going to let that simmer and we'll move on to the next step. The next thing we're going to do is brine our scallops. So in your box you'll have something that says kosher salt for brine. So what brining means is we're just going to take some salt, pop it in there. That is 25 grams, pre-measured. And then we're going to take 2 cups or 500 milliliters of water and pour that over. The reason we like to use this particular kosher salt is that you can see it dissolves very, very easily in this water. We don't have to heat it up or anything like that to dissolve it. What this brine is going to do to the scallops is it's A, going to season it very evenly, and B, pull out some of the excess moisture within the scallop so that it's a drier product when we go to sear it, which is going to create a much nicer seared scallop. So that's our brine. This is a 5% brine because 5% of the weight of the water is added in salt. So it's actually a good idea. You can brine any seafood or meat for that matter. It's great with chicken as well, for example, before we cook it. It just provides a nice, moister, more seasoned product with less water seeping out as we cook. So scallops, great one. It's just going to be a really quick amount of time that we're going to brine them for. So now that our brine's ready, we're just going to clean our scallops and get them into that brine. We're going to soak them in this brine for just 10 minutes. So we'll grab a nice plate to clean our scallops from. Good idea to have a little paper towel on that, and I'm actually going to remove a part of the scallop. We'll just pop in there as a little garbage bin. Here's our beautiful scallops we have there. So the way scallops are graded is kind of a size thing. So these are called U12s, which means that there are under 12 per pound. So they come out to about 1.3 ounces each, which for a scallop is a pretty hefty portion. These particular scallops, they come from, they're called Hokkaido scallops. They're from Hokkaido, Japan. They're kind of famous for their scallops there. The reason being they are super sweet and tender, and they're actually really quite creamy. They're very, very delicious scallops. They're also dry packed, which means they're not kind of soaked in a solution that increases their plumpness for market. So they're natural scallops. They're really delicious. One of my favorite things to eat. So what we're going to do, just pop that bag open. Just reach in there, make sure we got our clean hands. Pull those guys out and just set them on that paper towel. So you move that forward so we can see what's happening as I take them out. So you should smell the sweetness and the ocean right now. It's actually delicious. Just smelling them is great. Just set that guy aside. Typically when we buy scallops here, we have this little extra tab on the side there. It's just a different muscle. That's not the main part of the adductor muscle, which is the scallop. This part is actually a little bit tougher and is typically removed. You can leave it on if you want to. I mean, it's still delicious. It's just a little bit tougher and kind of falls off when you cook it anyway. So just gonna pull that off. Just do all 6. Some of them don't have one. And once we've got those all done, we can just pop those in the brine, and that will be 10 minutes. So we're just gonna let these soak for 10 minutes. When they're done, we'll take them out and drain them. So while these are browning, we'll set a timer for 10 minutes. So we can just set these guys aside as we move on to the next step. All right, next up, we're gonna prepare our dessert and get that into our foil baking cups so that all we have to do when it comes time for dessert is pop them in the oven. So the first thing we're gonna do for dessert is melt our chocolate and butter together. So we're gonna do that with a double boiler. So we'll take a pot, just put a little bit of water in there and get that to a simmer. Just about there. So as we come up, we'll just go over some of the ingredients we're going to need for this dessert. We're making a chocolate fondant cake, which is kind of like a half-baked chocolate cake. When we take it out of the oven, cut into it, it's going to ooze out delicious chocolate. Let's turn that down. We're just about there. So for this dessert, we're going to need the chocolate chips and our diced butter. That's going to be part of the first step. After that, we should have a couple of eggs like that. We're going to use in the second step of the dessert with sugar. And then by the time that's all mixed together, we have some flour. So as we see, our water is just about ready to go. Perfect. Just make sure we're at a simmer and not too hot. So what we're going to do is put a bowl on top of our pot. That's going to ensure that our chocolate does not burn. So first things first, we're going to take our butter and our chocolate and add those in. It's a good idea to leave behind one of these little cubes of butter. And we're going to use that to dust our baking pans with. We'll put our butter and our chocolate in. Grab our spatula and just give that a stir as it melts down. Just be careful when we're handling this bowl, as it will get very hot. We'll slowly melt these guys together. Perfect, that's exactly what we're looking for. Nice and smooth, nice and shiny, all melted, good to go. And next we're gonna mix our eggs and our sugar. We can just set this aside in the meantime. So after melting our chocolate, it should be about 10 minutes, which is perfect timing, as it's now time to take our scallops out of the brine. So we're going to take a clean paper towel and a clean plate, not the same one that we drained the scallops on previously, and just pull them out of the brine and let them drain on this paper towel until they're ready to cook. Should notice that they do feel a little bit tackier on the outside, and that is some of that moisture coming out of them and into the brine. There we go. We can discard the brine. It's not really good anymore. And we can set the scallops aside until we are ready to cook. All right, back to our chocolate cake. Our next step, we're gonna crack our eggs and mix it in with the sugar. So we got 2 eggs. And our sugar. Just gonna pop that in there, whisk everything together until it's a little bit light and frothy. Once that's nice and combined, we're going to go back and grab our bowl of melted chocolate and butter. Since this is a bit warm, we don't want to scramble our eggs. We're going to start off by just adding a little bit of the chocolate into here. It's called tempering. And like I said, it's going to keep the eggs from scrambling. We're just going to add a little bit in there. Kind of get them used to being in a warmer environment. Once that's all good, then we can just take this and add it all in back to the chocolate. Set this guy aside. Let's fold these together. Once that's all mixed together, we can reach for our flour. And we're just going to pour that over the top. Probably not a bad idea to switch back to the whisk for this step. Just gently mix that until just combined. You don't want to overwork it. Once we see that it's homogeneous, we're good to go. We can stop there. That's going to be our cake batter. It's all set. Now we're going to prepare our baking cups and set the dessert aside for when we're ready to pop it in the oven later on. So now we're going to prepare our baking cups to put the batter inside. So everybody should have 2 little foil cups, 1 for each portion. And then we set aside one of our little pieces of butter from earlier. We're going to use that to rub on the inside. There's also a little container of cocoa powder that we're going to use to dust the sides. So we're going to treat it with butter first, sprinkle some cocoa powder on it, and then fill it up with our batter. Let's take our butter. Just grease all around. Feel free to put on some gloves, or you can even use a fork or a knife for this step. So once we've greased that all nicely, just going to give my hand a quick rinse. After they're nice and greased with our butter, we're just going to take our cocoa powder and dust that inside. The easiest way to do that is to just pour a little bit in. I'm holding it over the other cup. We're just going to kind of rotate it around like that. Tap out the excess. And then repeat the process here. We can go back over original container. Roll that all around. Tap out the excess. And now our baking cups are perfect. I'm going to take our cake batter and put that inside our baking cups. Back to our spatula and just gently nudge that in. Feel free to make a mess. Nothing wrong with that. We are all set. We can just set these aside and we'll pop those in the oven later on as we're ready for dessert. All right, next up we're going to start prepping our vegetables for our salad that's going to go alongside our scallops and for our risotto. So we're going to get our big bowl that we had earlier for our salad vegetables. We'll set that aside, put our salad vegetables in there, and we should also have a small container for our diced shallot. So in our bag, we have a bag for our risotto items. In that bag there's a whole bunch of mushrooms as well as a single shallot. So single shallot is going to be our first step in the risotto. So we're going to dice this up. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to get them into small pieces. So what I'm going to do is just cut that in half this way, lay it flat, make a little cut like this way, another one this way, and then cuts across there. So it's kind of the same technique that you would dice an onion with. And just cut that into smaller dice this way. We don't want to cut them too finely because then they'll be likely to burn as we sweat them out. Again with the other half. This is going to be kind of the aromatic step of our risotto. We're going to have a base flavor of shallots and mushrooms. Shallots provide a really great savory note in anything we cook, and they're a little more gentle than an onion would be. You could also use onions if you were to make this. There's our nice diced shallots to start off with. And then we can set that aside. That's the only prep we really need to do for our risotto. Next up, we're going to start preparing the vegetables for our salad that's going to be served alongside the scallops. So going back to our kits, we should have another bag of vegetables right here. Within said bag, we have our ingredients for our salad component of the scallop dish. So we have a bit of a bulb of fennel, a couple of red radishes, a beautiful watermelon radish, a cucumber, a lemon. We're actually going to divide that lemon in half and use some of it for the risotto, and some herbs. Within the bag in a bag, we have various herbs that are going to flavor our salad, being some fennel fronds, some pea shoots, and some mint. You can set those guys aside. First off, we're going to focus on our radishes, our fennel, and our cucumber. So the idea here is that we can cut them very thin. If you have a mandolin, you can feel free to use that, but I'm just going to use a knife. You could also technically use a vegetable peeler, would be fine too. But like I said, I'm just going to use a knife and cut them fairly thin to build up our salad. I mean, we've got those cut, we're just going to pop them in our bowl and repeat with all our other ingredients, our radishes, it's going to be a beautiful, fresh, crisp salad to go alongside our scallops. We're just going to dress it nicely with some lemon juice and some olive oil. Then our fennel. What I like to do with the fennel, you see it has a core in there, is just sort of give it a little cut this way. Kind of remove that tough core. And then you can even break it off into smaller pieces for cutting. Just makes it a little bit easier to handle. And we're going to cut that really thin as well. Provides kind of a really nice, beautiful licoricey note to our salad. Again, keeping in that vein of really fresh, crisp flavors going along with that scallop. That guy out of the way. It's going to be a little bit tougher. We want just the nice tender white part at the base. That in there too. And last but not least, we have our cucumber. Just get those scraps out of the way. And with our cucumber, just take off that little bit of plastic wrapping. What I like to do with the cucumber is actually cut it in half. Cut it in half. I'm going to grab a spoon. I'm actually going to scoop out some of those seeds. Tend to be a little bit on the bitter side. So we'll just scoop those guys out of there. And then again, we'll just cut them really thin. Gives a nice mouthfeel when we eat our salad with everything cut kind of the same. Really thin vegetables. Let's pop those in there too. And just the last of our cucumber. Finish off that salad. Then we can get into prepping some of our hot food. See, we got some nice beautiful colors in there from the radishes, watermelon radishes, nice bright pink. Get that all going, and we'll actually pick through these herbs now too. Just gonna dry off my cutting board. So what we've got in here, we've got some pea shoots. They can kind of go in as is, so just pick those out, pop them in there. They provide kind of a nice sweet yet earthy note to the salad. These are one of my favorite ingredients to use. Just throw all those guys in. There's also some mint, which is going to give a nice kind of sweet note to it and freshen it up even more. So I'm just going to pick off all the leaves. Stems we don't really need for this application. Okay, next up with the mint leaves, we're just gonna kind of bundle them all together, give them a quick little chop. Just toss those in there too. And lastly, we have these guys. A lot of people, I find, they confuse them with dill, but they're actually the tops of the fennel, so they provide a bit of a licoricey and also a very beautiful look to the salad. I'm just gonna pick that off kind of the tougher stems too. Let's get those all in there. And there we have our salad alongside the scallops. So we're gonna just kind of let this hang out until we're ready to plate it. We're not gonna dress it just yet. Otherwise it's gonna get a little bit soggy, especially with all these herbs in there. Last little bit of prep we're gonna do with vegetables is this lemon. So half of it's gonna go to the salad and half of it's going to go into the risotto. So that means we have to cut it in half. Let's take it down the middle, set both sides aside. One of them is gonna just basically be our salad dressing for that fresh herb and radish and cucumber fennel salad. And the other one we're gonna actually add into our risotto kind of last minute to sort of cut through some of that richness it's gonna have. So got our lemon in half, we're gonna use that in two different places. Okay, next up we got our risotto. So a good pan for risotto is going to be something shaped like this. This one's called a sautoir, where it has kind of short sides and a wide surface on the bottom. Failing that, you could absolutely use a frying pan like this. Not going to be a big deal, but I would steer more towards a frying pan than a pot. It's just going to have the rice heat a little faster as we cook it, and that's key to making a good risotto. So first step we're going to do, we're actually going to start building the flavors from the ground up. First step, we're going to take our bag of mushrooms. So we have some beautiful wild mushrooms here. Inside we got some shimeji mushrooms, some oyster mushrooms, maitake mushrooms. Just a really good mix of good mushroom flavor. So first things first, we're going to heat up our pan. there, we're going to take our oil and just put a little bit in there to coat the bottom. We're actually going to saute our mushrooms and remove them from the pan, so we're just kind of building some base flavor, taking the mushrooms out, and we're actually going to stir them back in towards the end of cooking our risotto. So we'll let that pan get nice and hot. A key with cooking mushrooms is we want to make sure that we're not overcrowding the pan, because when we overcrowd the pan, what tends to happen is the mushrooms will start to steam. So I'm actually going to do this amount in 2 batches based on the size of my pan. Just put a little bit in there to start with. That way all the mushrooms are in contact with the pan. There's going to be a lot of good browning on that. If we kind of stack them up, half the mushrooms wouldn't be touching the pan, and what would happen is they would just steam. Once we got those in there, we can just hit them with a little bit of salt. It's going to season them as well as pull out some of that moisture that's inside them. Just keep them moving. A high heat I find is really good with mushrooms to get some of that nice browning on the outside, which is where our flavor comes from. It's going to take a couple of minutes. We're going to start to see them caramelizing a little bit on the outside. It should smell absolutely fantastic as we do this step. So after a couple of minutes, we can start to see the mushrooms taking on a little bit of brown color, which is exactly what we're looking for. It's where we kind of get that meaty flavor. Okay, we're starting to see some really nice browning on some of these guys now. So our first batch, looking pretty good there. Getting some nice color. We don't want to burn them. It's going to offer a lot of bitter flavor. So what I'm going to do is just move these guys off to the container, let them hang out, and then do the second batch of mushrooms before we start to really build our risotto in the pan. So those guys can just hang out there. We're going to add our second batch of mushrooms. Put a little bit more oil in there. We don't want our pan to go dry with these, or else they're going to burn really quickly. Again, hit it with a little bit of salt to both season it and bring out some of that moisture inside the mushroom. Same thing here, just going to give this a little toss. You'll notice they do lose quite a bit of their volume as we cook them. And what that is that's all that moisture inside. As we seasoned it, all that moisture inside the mushrooms escaping. A lot of the weight in a mushroom is actually in water within it. And then that's all this steam you see coming up is that water evaporating away. So definitely a way to concentrate the flavors within the mushroom. You see your pan getting a little bit dry, don't be shy. Add in a little bit more fat. Since we are working with such high heat in this stage, I would recommend using a canola oil or a grapeseed or something that isn't going to get bitter. Definitely not butter at this point. There we go, starting to look really good. Nice deep brown color. They've lost a lot of their volume, which means the flavor is concentrated really nicely. I think we're ready to set these guys aside too. Just kind of scrape all that out of our pan, because we're going to actually build the risotto in this pan for the next step. Alright, we've got our mushrooms all nice and sauteed, nice and golden brown. We'll set those aside and start building the rest of our risotto. So what we're going to need is our diced shallots from earlier, a little bit of salt that we have, our cooking oil, half lemon. Of course, the other half is going to be set aside for our salad. Also got some grated Parmesan cheese. Our truffle butter, which is going to provide all that awesome truffle flavor in there. A little bit of white wine. And last but not least, our risotto rice. So for this risotto, we're using arborio rice, which is an Italian kind of short to medium grain rice with high starch content, so that when we cook it, the starch dissolves into the water, kind of creating a creamy sauce around the rice. So that's what we're looking for. So there we are. Also, we have from earlier our nice hot mushroom stock. So that should be heated up while we're doing all the other steps and ready to go, so that we don't have to wait for our water to come up to, or our stock to come up to a boil every time we add it into the rice. So let's get started on the risotto. Fire up our pan. You can use the same pan you used for the mushrooms. A little bit of cooking oil. And our shallots can go in first. So with the shallots, it's kind of not going to be the same as the mushrooms. We're not looking for very much color here. We're just looking more to sweat them. We're just building the flavor. So a little bit of seasoning in there and some salt. Stir them around. They're going to start to sizzle a little bit. Again, we're not looking to color them. We're not looking to brown them, anything like that. We're just looking for them to soften up a bit. So the trick there is to not have your heat too high, keep them moving, and keep a good eye on them. So once these start going, it's going to start to smell really good. So what's going to happen after they start sweating and before they start caramelizing or burning, they're going to be in this perfect stage that we call translucent, where you can kind of start to see through them a little bit. They're going to be quite soft at this point. And that's going to look a bit something like this. So once we get to this stage, what we can do is crack open our bag of rice. Just be really careful there. You can use a pair of scissors or your knife. And just carefully pop that into your pan. So before we add any liquid, we're actually going to stir this rice around, let all the shallots and rice get all mixed together. Get the oil coating all the grains of rice. And what's going to happen is the rice is going to toast a little bit. And as it does that, it's going to take on some nutty flavors as we build the base of our risotto. It takes about a minute. You're going to start to smell the nuttiness in the rice. So my rice is smelling very nice and toasty right now. I'm going to next up grab that wine and pour that in. So it's immediately going to sizzle and almost go dry pretty quickly, which is what we're looking for. So that wine is just imparting some nice round umami flavors, some acidity. Once that wine's pretty much all dried up, we're going to start adding in our hot mushroom stock. So with risotto, kind of the old school way is to stand over the stove, constantly adding stock and stirring. We do have a small amount, and our pan is kind of shallow with a lot of surface and contact area on that rice. So get a little bit more leeway in that respect, where we can add a larger amount as it's going to stay hot. We are going to keep stirring. This whole process is going to take probably between 20 and 25 minutes from here on in. So what we're doing here, we're just kind of stirring and cooking until that liquid sort of runs dry, the rice absorbs it all. We want to maintain a pretty good, not quite boil, but a pretty good simmer with our liquid. So you want to keep a good eye on your heat. That's part of the key of having a nice hot stock to start out with. So we can see that our liquid is A, absorbing, and B, that starch is coming out of the rice and it's thickening that liquid into kind of a sauce. It's exactly what we're looking for in a good risotto. We're getting close now to that point where most of the stock has been absorbed by the grains of rice. We can start thinking about adding in a little bit more stock as we build this. So a couple more ladles full. And just keep it moving. Risotto has a reputation as being one of the more difficult dishes to make. It's got this kind of mystique about it. It's actually, as you see, quite a simple dish to put together. So we're just building some flavors with some aromatics. We got shallots, toasting some rice, and then cooking it with some wine and some stock. There's not a whole lot to it. So it is one of those dishes that requires a little bit of patience. And for me with this dish, the simpler the flavors, the better. We're just doing a straight up mushroom and truffle, not a lot going on. And that sort of is the beauty of the dish. With a lot of things, with a lot of ingredients, you can just keep adding more things. You got nowhere to hide with risotto. So there we are, most of our stock is absorbed again. So we're going to go back to our mushroom stock, add in a little bit more. See, at this point, a lot of our stock has been used. So that's a good sign that we're getting really close. Of course, the best sign to know when it's done is going to be to taste it. So what we're looking for with a good risotto is it's going to hold its shape. It's going to be soft on the outside, and it's going to have still just a little bit of bite in the middle of the grain of rice. That's what we want. We don't want it to be crunchy. We just want it to have some structure to it. Let's say al dente, which means to the tooth. It's going to be a little toothsome. You're going to feel it, but it's not going to be crunchy by any means. It's going to be a nice, pleasant texture. The other thing, as we get close, we're going to start adding in some of our flavor building ingredients towards the end. So we've got a little bit of lemon there. So with something rich like risotto, we have the richness from the starch in the rice. We're going to have richness from Parmesan we're going to add to it. We're going to have richness from that butter we're going to add to it. So whenever you have a lot of richness or fat, you can always benefit from adding a bit of acidity. And we're going to do that in this case with a bit of that half lemon that we had from earlier. We're just going to squirt a little bit of lemon juice into there. It's going to sort of brighten it up and cut through some of that acidity. We should be getting pretty close at this point. It's a good idea to just take a little spoonful and see where we're at. We're still a little firm. Probably got a good 5 or 6 minutes still left to go. Once we're just about there, like just right knocking on the door of the texture we want, that's where we're going to add in our parm and add in our lemon. And then towards the very end, right before we're ready to serve it, once the texture is really nice, we're going to add in that butter. We don't want to add in the butter as it's boiling because the fat's going to kind of separate out of the butter and make a greasy risotto. What we want to do is emulsify that in. Have the fat kind of coating all of the grains and dispersing itself evenly. Now in that truffle butter, when we do add it right there, we do have some chopped up black truffles in that. So a lot of times you'll see truffle on a menu and it'll just be referring to truffle oil, which is to me nowhere near what a real truffle would taste like. Truffle oil it's kind of a synthesized flavor. It contains just one of the many flavor molecules that's in an actual truffle. So truffle oil, it's definitely synthesized, not actually from truffles, but a lot of times you'll see that on a menu and that's what it'll be. But we're going to use the real stuff today in here. So a good way to preserve that flavor, like with any flavor, is we've chopped it up and we've thrown it into some butter. That's going to preserve it for a very long time. It's a really great way to extend that flavor. We don't really need a lot. There's only about 5 grams of actual truffle paste in there. It's going to go a long way. You see now we're getting really close on our stock again. It's almost all absorbed into the rice. Starting to look really thick and creamy. And the cool thing about risotto is people who sometimes see recipes will be cream added to it, which is kind of funny because that natural creaminess comes from the rice itself and the starch. So it looks like there's a whole bunch of cream added to this, but as we've been building it together, you notice it's just stock rice. So there we are, getting really close. I'm going to take another taste. I think I might... Not quite yet. I'm just going to go ahead and add another ladle or two of my stock. And that should be all I need. So I have about that much left over. Once we notice all this stock kind of absorbing into the rice, what we're going to do, we're going to hit it with another pinch of salt, put in all that parm, squirt a lemon, and then just at the very end, we're going to fold those beautiful golden brown mushrooms back in, and also hit it with that truffle butter. And then we will be good to go. All right, as you can see, we're coming up really, really close on this risotto. Just going to check the texture again. Pretty much perfect, exactly what we're looking for at this stage. So what we see now, what we're looking for at this point, is we're going to run the spoon through it. Take our wooden spoon and run it through. We want to leave a bit of a trail. We want it to not look like soup, but more like something a little thicker, like a porridge. It's not quite there yet, but we can tell it's really close. We have this beautiful thick sauce forming around the rice. There we go, it's getting a little thicker. Should almost be like a wave as we pull it through. We're really close. It's time to season that. Just gonna hit it with a pinch of salt. And take our parm. I'm gonna take about half of this. We're gonna reserve some for the end, for garnishing towards the end. Just put a little bit of that in there. That really wakes it up flavor-wise. So savory now. Just keep stirring that. Getting really, really close. We're gonna watch our heat at this point. We're gonna turn it as low as we can. And then we're gonna just squeeze that half lemon in there. A little trick I like to do is put my hand under this way to sort of catch all those seeds from falling in. And just as we get to the end there, you can sort of see what I'm talking about there. Now, as we run that spoon through, you can sort of see a little trail starting to form. Not quite all the way. You should be able to see the bottom of the pan for just a second as we do that. And there we go. I'm going to fold in those mushrooms that we cooked earlier. And last but not least, see it's all happening quickly now as we get to the end. Last but not least, we're going to take that truffle butter and we're just going to pop that in there. Give it a stir till that's melted through. And then our risotto is going to be ready. So what we can do with this guy, our scallops, our appetizer is only going to take about 3 minutes to put together. So what we're going to do the risotto, so we get to that sweet spot, I like to actually let it sit and have a little rest for a couple of minutes before plating. Let's say that guy is good to go. We'll set that. Just leave that in the pan as we put together our scallop. And then we'll be ready to plate. There's what we're looking for right there. Drag the spoon through and it falls upon itself. That's perfect. You see like that, we got a nice wave action going. That's perfect, exactly what we're looking for. All right, next we're gonna sear our scallops. So key to doing that is have a nice hot pan. So get this guy nice and fired up. I'm using a non-stick pan here. It's just a good strategy to prevent your scallops from sticking to the pan. Cast iron works well, a little thin carbon pan works well. Anything that can hold a high heat is really good, and something that's well seasoned. So with our scallops, we have these beautiful U12 Hokkaido scallops. Now Hokkaido scallops are prized for how delicious they are eaten raw or rare. So even though we are searing them, we're going to keep that in mind, and we're going to just sear them a little bit on the outside and kind of not really cook them too much. Of course, if that's your preference, you can take them a little bit further, put them in the oven or keep them in the pan a little bit longer, but I think they eat best if they're just seared lightly on the outside. Put a little bit of oil in the pan. Let that get nice and hot. Now, even though our scallops are brined, we are still going to season them ever so lightly. So just a little pinch of salt in my hand on the scallops, just like that. Make sure our pan's nice and hot. And gently place our scallops in. That's exactly the sound we're looking for. While we're waiting, we'll just grab a clean paper towel to sort of take them off onto, because we're going to drain them. You don't want to play around with them too much. As with any protein, you want to leave it in the pan and let that crust kind of form on it. If you were to shake it around or move it around too much, that wouldn't really happen. That nice crust wouldn't develop. And that crust is a lot of the caramelization that's going on in the meat. There's a lot of cool reactions happening, causing that great flavor. You can see we're getting some nice browning. Gonna let that go a little bit longer. And once we're happy, we're gonna give them a flip and just finish them on the other side for about 30 seconds. And like I said, this is gonna be a pretty rare scallop, and that's how I think these particular scallops eat best. But if it's your preference to cook them a little bit more, that's gonna be okay too. There we go, that's exactly what we're looking for. Beautiful, nice, even sear on there. Perfect. Flip them all over, and like I said, just a quick little kiss on the other side, just in time for Valentine's Day. If we're going to be good there, just turn off that heat and take them off the drain. Perfect. All right, time to plate. A couple nice bowls for the risotto and some nice plates for the scallops. So for the scallop dish, we're going to plate that first. We're going to start with our salad. Just slide these over so I have a bit of room. A little salad. Now we can dress that. If we dressed that earlier, we'd probably run into some problems with it getting soggy, but we're going to be all right now. So just a quick little dressing of some oil and lemon. So just a little bit of olive oil on there. Doesn't take a lot. And a little squeeze of lemon. Again, we're going to do that trick where we stick our hand kind of underneath it. Catch all those lemon seeds. And then just give that a nice gentle toss around. Beautiful, nice and colorful. And then what we're going to do is just gently build up that salad. So plating is kind of a personal thing, kind of do what you feel looks best on the plate. For me, what I'm going to do, I'll just nicely build up my little colorful salad up in this part of the plate there. So we'll be doing 2 of these. Just want to make sure we have a nice even amount of this salad for both. Get those nice watermelon radishes. We want to show those off. So I'm plating something like this. I always like to pick out the nicest components that I see in a bowl of a mixed salad and sort of put those guys on top. To say that the color on this is fantastic anyways. So yeah, and then what we're gonna do is just grab our little scallops there and place them 1, 2, 3 around the front. that. 2, 3. Just get that guy back where he belongs. A little squeeze of lemon back over the scallops, doesn't hurt anything there. And there we have our seared scallop appetizer. Next up, we're going to move into plating our risotto. For our risotto, we trail the spoon through it. We get that nice little bit falling back on in the pan. As we spread it out, we should see it kind of flow. Cover the bottom of the bowl like that. Just divide that amongst the two. If we give it a little shake, it should spread out. Cover the entirety of the bowl. Perfect. With that is just sprinkle the remainder of that nice Parmesan cheese on the top. There we go. Our truffle and wild mushroom risotto. And our seared Hokkaido scallops. Happy Valentine's Day. Hope everybody had a great date night. But one more thing before we dig in here, we got to remember that we have to put our chocolate cakes into the oven. They're going to be about 10 minutes at 400 degrees. All right, so we've got our risotto, we've got our scallops, and right before we dig into that, we're going to pop our chocolate fondant cakes into our oven. So it's going to be about 10 minutes. Depends on your oven. It's going to be anywhere from 10 to 12. So I'm nice and preheated as we did earlier. I'm just going to slide these guys in there. Keep in mind when we take them out, they're going to be really hot. So there we go. There we are after 10 minutes, looking really good. You see they've risen quite a lot. Just gonna check it. It looks like they're done. You can sort of tell by how set it is around the outside. You give it a press, sort of feel where it's more liquid. So these are we're gonna take out very, very carefully. So I like to grab a set of tongs and a cloth and just sort of pull them out like that. And we'll just set them down to cool. Very carefully pull them out. There we go. So we're just going to let those stand to cool for a few minutes. That's after 10 minutes. They look great, really nice and set. If you press them a little bit, you can feel that it's still quite soft in the center. So the easiest way to do this, they're still going to be quite hot. Take your plate, tip your cake upside down, and there we go. And same thing on the other side. Take the plate, tip the cake upside down. It should pop right out. These little baking cups are great for that. They are the best way I've seen to simply get them out. On top of that, we've also got a little bit of whipped cream and some Amarena cherries. These cherries are marinated in a delicious syrup. Just pop that off. And we will spoon that cream on top, just like that. Same thing on that one. Now, it's gonna probably melt pretty quickly given that the cake is so hot out of the oven. These cherries we can just place around. Same on the other guy, and don't let this syrup go to waste. This stuff is delicious. We'll just pour that on top. There we go, and it wouldn't be a lava cake if we didn't show off the inside. So let's just give that a little cut, and then we can see all that delicious chocolate action inside. There we go, beautiful. Enjoy. On behalf of the team at Belgard Kitchen, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for this special Valentine's Apron Club session. Hopefully the first of many, and we'll see you again in the future. Stay tuned after this. We're going to actually head over to the restaurant with myself and our general manager and sommelier, Don Blom, and we're going to talk about our wine pairings with tonight's meal. So thanks again. Hope everybody had a great time, and we'll see you soon. Hey again, everybody. We are actually here now at the restaurant at Belgard Kitchen in the Settlement Building in Vancouver. Joining me is Dawn Blom, our general manager and sommelier, and she's going to speak to the wines that we've chosen to pair with our food tonight.
Hi guys, thanks for joining us. First off, let's just talk about Vancouver Urban Winery. It is Okanagan grown and Railtown made. So what that means is we source all of our grapes from the Okanagan, bring it down, and make the wine ourselves. It's been a really fun venture, and I'm really excited to have them paired for you guys tonight. So, first off, let's talk about the Reliance White. This wine here. Oh yeah.
That one.
Yeah, that one.
The white one.
Yeah. It is 80% Pinot Blanc and 20% Mueller-Thurgau. Mueller-Thurgau is an Italian varietal that you don't necessarily see in BC all the time, but they decided to grow it, and it turned out really well, so they've added it to the wine. This wine has lots of nice acidity to it. It has some lemon rind, some orange blossom, but it also has a really nice minerality to it as well. So
that sounds great with the scallop dish, as
Absolutely.
we have lots of bright notes from the herbs and the fennel in the salad, as well as the sweetness of the scallops. So
yeah,
perfect pair.
Absolutely.
All right.
Also, all of these wines that we picked tonight are going to pair with a lot of the dishes that we have. They can also just be drunk on their own as well. So that's what I like to do. Moving on to the rosé. So it is 100% Merlot. It is, nice acidity to it. Has a nice dryness to it as well. But it also, like you find in a rosé, has a touch of sweetness to it. I really, really like this wine paired with the risotto because it's going to pair really nicely with the truffle and then also the mushroom as well.
So you pick up notes of sage in this wine?
Yeah, absolutely do. Because it is from the South Okanagan, sage grows there technically like a weed. And, anything that comes out of the South Okanagan, you're going to get those sage notes to it, and this is a really nice example of that.
Perfect. Little herbal notes, some mushrooms, truffles, all makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like almost a perfect pairing. So lastly, the wine that we have here is our Merlot. This wine is really, really, really good. I really love this wine. I love drinking it on its own. I love drinking it with food. What we've paired it with tonight is our dessert. This wine does have those chocolate notes to it, dark cherry notes as well, which I think is going to pair really nicely with the chocolate cake.
For sure, and we've thrown some Amarena cherries into that dessert as well. Just play off of those flavors.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for joining us, guys. I hope that you enjoy your dinner, and I hope you enjoy the wines that I've prepared with it as well.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us and for staying home.
Stay safe, stay home, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And some pepper. It's a pepper.